All right, folks, we'll go ahead and get the program started. If you're eating your dessert, keep eating your dessert. I'll tell you, it's an honor and a pleasure to get to be the guy to start this thing off. This is a great thing in the fire service to get so many groups together and so many people together for a great cause. This program started years back as originally the health and safety program, and it's morphed into what we have tonight. And as we go forward, I want to continue to grow and get more people involved. And I know this is a tough weekend. A lot of you kids have 4-day weekends, and you know, husbands and wives want to do things, and y'all decided to come here with us. So thank you for being here. I want to start by thanking our sponsors for our dinner tonight. IFTA, who was a great partner with us in the association and does a lot of great things for us. And also I want to thank the fire chiefs. So if you'll look over to this wall where Jeff is standing, you'll see the camera. We are streaming live tonight, so Alvin, behave yourself. For those that tweet, it is hashtag, I had to write this down because I really don't tweet. I got Twitter, but all I do is just like look what y'all write. So it's hashtag FIS15. So send a tweet out, let everybody know you're here, let everybody know how things are going, and maybe next year they'll decide to come as well. So now we're going to get into our program for tonight, and I'm going to bring Joe Palmer up to introduce our first instructor.
I'm really excited about the weekend. I appreciate each of you being here. We're incredibly fortunate to be able to line up some really impactful individuals to speak with us this weekend, and our first speaker tonight is no different from that and certainly fits that category. Pam Elliott is a lady who I've known now for a couple of years and had the pleasure of sitting in on her presentation in a classroom environment and something similar to this. And I will assure you that before this is over with, you'll be ready to laugh, fight somebody, cry, maybe all at the same time. Not necessarily about what you got to say, but just the way she pumps people up. But I want to tell you, you're going to have to really take with a grain of salt what she says, because she's a fisherman, and she just told me a while ago she caught an 18-pound fish, so I don't know. I hadn't seen pictures, and I wasn't there for the weigh-in, so I don't know whether it's true. But Pam comes from Winston-Salem, and, you know, that's that other Carolina back that way behind me a little bit, and that wannabe crowd, but she's still a pretty good person. And I tell you, as good a person as she is, Larry's even better for hauling her around and being right there with her all the time like he does. He's just as much a partner with this, too. But Pam is no stranger to the fire service. She is a member of the Phoenix Society. She is published and has been in NFPA Journal, as well as one of the things she stirred up recently. She was in FirefighterNation.com with an article that she did. It was really passionately and well put. And I'm just proud and glad to have her here with us this night. My friend and a wonderful person of the fire service. Pam, the podium is yours.
So just do this button to the side. Down. Okay, thank you. I bet y'all are wondering what's in this bag. It's a prize. I have never given away a prize before, but I thought since I was coming to South Carolina and my husband believes that this is paradise, that I needed to kind of taunt you. And so at the end of my presentation, I have a question that I'm going to ask, and whoever can answer my question gets the prize. But I'm going to tell you, if Carter Jones can't answer it, I don't believe anybody could. It's a big temptation in that bag, y'all. Okay, let me get my papers here so I won't get off course. Whenever I am invited to share my story, I kind of ask myself, and I do this every time, and sometimes it's a no-brainer, but I say, you know, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this really where I'm supposed to be? Now, one time a shrine club invited me to speak, and I went to Lake Norman and had a wonderful picnic, and when we arrived, the folks were wearing these shirts. Now, that probably doesn't mean anything to y'all, but I grew up in West Virginia, and I'm like, these are my people. These are my people here. And so when they asked me to come tonight to speak to you guys, it was last spring that I spoke to the very first group of firemen. And I shared this story with them just because it's just one of those things that happens in life that you say, this is just unreal. I was participating in a research study in Dallas, Texas, and I had a day off, and I was riding down the road, and I kept seeing these giant live oak trees. And I thought, well, I had taken a book, and I was just going to go to the park and relax and read. And so I turned around and came back, and as I turned in, there were just literally hundreds and hundreds of these trees. But, you know, I thought it was a park. But then I realized that it was a cemetery. You notice the little flowers there in the lower right-hand corner? And so I just said, they had these little white benches, and I thought, well, I'll just ride around and just find a place to, you know, read my book. And as I was riding, I saw this thing in the distance, and I was like, what in the world is that? And as I got closer, I realized that it was a policeman fireman memorial. And there was one grave there, and it was of a policeman, a Dallas policeman who had died in the line of duty, had been shot. And anyway, it had the turnout gear of policemen and firemen bronzed on it with these two angels, and they were holding these wreaths in their hands. And one of them said, "We love you and we miss you," and the other one said, "We will never forget." And as you looked up, the angels were facing each other, leaning back, and on one arm was a policeman, and on the other one was a fireman. Now, as I was there that day, I parked at the bottom of the square, and I had forgotten my camera, and I actually went back and bought some disposables and went back to take these pictures. There was something that was written on the granite that I was like going to copy down. So I went back to my car, and I was sitting there and digging through my purse to find a pencil and paper, and as I looked up, someone parked on the right-hand side of the square. And there was virtually nobody there that day. And I was like, well, that's kind of odd. And as the lady got out of the car, I kind of gasped because I recognized her. It was this guy's wife coming to the grave to change the flowers on the grave. And so I got out of the car, and I walked up to her, and I said, "Ma'am, you don't know me from Adam." I said, "But I am a burn survivor, and I am here participating in a research study, and I am so sorry for your loss." And I stood and talked to her probably for 15 minutes. And so I use this story to say, you know, I don't know what the chances are that I drove by this 400-acre cemetery and just happened upon this memorial. But I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, and I am 100% sure that I'm supposed to be here to talk to you today. Things like this just don't happen by accident. The other thing that gave me a deep appreciation of the firefighters is the fact that when my house burned, an 18-year-old boy was driving by, and he came in, got me out of the house, took me to the hospital. And I didn't meet him until years later. I grew up in a little rural community in southern West Virginia, and I never could figure out why I never met him. I met his wife, but I never met him. And when I finally did meet him, we chatted momentarily, and then he looked at me and he said, "I have to tell you, I never wanted to meet you." He said, "I can close my eyes and see you as you were that day." He said, "It took me 2 years before I could sleep through the night." And it just hit me, of all the things that you guys see, all the horrific things that you see. So I have a deep appreciation in my heart for firefighters. And it is no accident that I am here to speak to you today. It's just been amazing, my connection with South Carolina, especially through my husband. My family has always insisted that the tragedy of our home burning happened for a purpose. I believe that part of my purpose is to be here today to share my story, and I want to thank and applaud the South Carolina firefighters for all the hard work you do to protect life, prevent injuries, and decrease property loss. It is my hope that the work that you do will eventually prevent you from having to hear another story like mine. The 2-story country frame home that was my house in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia burned to the ground. It was the home of my grandmother, great-grandmother, my parents, and my brother. I obtained this newspaper article about 4 years ago from a fellow in my community who, ironically, is now a fireman. He had inherited a piece of furniture from his grandmother and was cleaning it out when he discovered this paper. No one in my family had ever seen it, and I am so grateful to have it. One day, I was a little 5-year-old girl making mud pies on the creek bank across the road from my home, and the next day I lay in a hospital bed not expected to live. But against all odds, I did live, but the results were horrific. I like to call this the human impact of fire. I received 3rd-degree burns over 50% of my body. My head, face, arms, upper chest, back, sides of my legs, and tops of my feet were burned. Initially, I was in the hospital for 3 months. I went home for 4 months and back for 9 months. I stayed in the hospital for 3 to 6 months at a time until I was 16 years old. I want to give you a little rule of thumb for calculating how long someone will spend in the burn unit. It is this: for every degree burned, you will spend that many days. For example, I was a 50% burn, so I would have spent 50 days in the burn unit, at least 50 days. Now, a burn unit cost is about $5,000 a day. So 5,000 times 50 is $250,000, $250,000. Now, I'm just talking about the burn unit stay. I'm not talking about the stay after that, or rehab, or subsequent operations, which, I was operating on 7 years ago again. So the cost is tremendous. And I used to say that I was probably worth $1 million. But since I discovered this, I like to say I'm probably worth $2 million. And I must confess, I think I'm worth it. Anyway, it's really interesting when you look at fire statistics. Nobody has ever calculated the cost of the effects of fire of the survivor. And so I'm sure it is in the billions. The folks in Sunnybrook, Canada are doing that now. But it's just amazing to me that in all of the horrific numbers that we see from the effects of fire, the cost of the survivor is never mentioned. My face had to be grafted. My arms and hands had to be straightened to provide functionality. It was an arduous process involving hand braces, pins, and multiple scar releases. Sometimes both hands were operated on at once, leaving me with white gauze boxing gloves. I distinctly remember a group of women coming to visit the hospital. One of the women stopped at my bed, noted my boxing gloves, and said, "Oh, you poor dear." Poor dear? You've got to be kidding me. They have to do everything for me. I've got it made. This picture shows the hand brace that I was required to wear in order to straighten my hands. Burns are the most devastating injuries anyone can experience. A comment from someone who had seen some of our Common Voices presentations prompted me to include the next pictures because they said we were far too nice and correct in our presentations. The next pictures are not for the faint of heart. They vividly show the devastation burns can cause. I think it's important for people to see the horrific effects of burns. It takes months and sometimes years for folks to recover, to gain function, and to gain strength. Another aspect that folks do not realize is that the treatment is also almost as painful. They have to cut away the burned flesh, and then the good skin you have has to be peeled off in order to replace what they have cut off. So not only do you have scars from your burns, you have scars from the treatment. As a burn survivor, because of the scars that you have to deal with, people will stare at you on a daily basis. It's just a given. If you look different, people are going to stare at you. It's the human impact of fire. It is interesting to note that a huge percentage of survivors hide away. But my mother would never allow that. She insisted that I was just like any other little girl and I could do anything any other little girl could do. As a child, you believe what your parents tell you. So for a while, I believed that I was normal. Not too long after I was discharged from the hospital, my mom and I were downtown, and I caught a man staring at me, and I thought, what's wrong with him? Doesn't that man know it's not nice to stare? I didn't think, what's wrong with me? Why is he staring at me? But as I grew older, I became acutely aware that I looked different. As a 9-year-old looking in the mirror one night, before going to bed, I asked God to take the scars off my face. I'm not asking you to take them off anywhere else. I know that you can do it, so when I wake up in the morning, I know that they're going to be gone. The next morning, I rushed to the bathroom mirror to discover that the scars were still there. The scars were not gone, but I had to go on. Now, I know you must be thinking, she probably had to deal with a lot of comments growing up. But the amazing thing is, I did not. I went through grade school, junior high, high school, in my small rural community, and nobody ever made fun of me or called me names. Nobody. But people do make some amazing comments. I was working as a cashier in a grocery store when I caught a man gawking at me. Now, some days, you know, when I catch people staring at me, I will just ignore them. And then other days, I will stare you down. I will let you know that you have been caught. And this day, as I was slinging groceries in the grocery store, I was in the catching mood. So I caught his eye, and this little man in his little bibbed overalls looked at me and said, "My God, lady, what happened to you? Did you get burned up?" And I mean, what do you say? No, I'm just a figment of your imagination. I said, yes, I got burned up. Now, you have to realize at that moment, I was about ready to cold cock him when he says, "Well, you sure are awful purty." Now, what can I say? What can I say? Buddy, I've gone in a few seconds from getting ready to knock you out to wanting to hug your neck. The human impact of fire. I graduated in the top 10 of my high school class and was college bound because vocational rehabilitation was paying for me to go to school. They told me that I had crippled hands. And I told them, I said, you know, I can type, I can play the piano, I can crochet, I can knit, I can sew, I can even curl my hair on those little pink sponge curlers. But if you insist that I have crippled hands, okay. I do not have any end joints in my fingers, like when I make a fist, there's no extra curl there. I have one stiff finger and I have one crooked finger, but my hands are perfectly functional. since they were paying me to go to college, I applied to a small private college in the northern West Virginia to become a physician's assistant, which was brand new at the time. Now, there were 5 people on their board of admissions. The summer of my junior year, I went up for an interview, spoke to the registrar and his associate. Fall of my senior year, I got a second letter asking me to come back for a second interview. So, what did I think? I thought, woohoo, baby, I'm in. My mother was not able to accompany me that day. A classmate went with me, and when we arrived, I walked into the room where the 3 medical people on the board were present. And they proceeded to tell me that people naturally have a fear of doctors. And since I would be initially meeting patients and taking their health history, they felt that because of my physical appearance, I would instill a deeper fear within the patient. I was 17 at the time, and nobody had ever said anything like that to me. I distinctly remember thanking God that my mother was not there that day, because I can guarantee you there would have been a brawl. I was rejected from this college and directed to a totally different path. It was just a very sad time in my life, but I knew it was where I was supposed to be, but I didn't want to be there. I actually ended up attending Bible college. It was a brand new environment, and people were asking me all the time about what had happened to me and if I minded talking about it. And in the most delightful way, I would tell them my tragic story. But their asking eventually began to eat at my soul, because even though I had been repeatedly told that this had happened for a purpose, I did not know the purpose. And one day, I was sitting down to eat lunch in the college cafeteria with a very charismatic classmate of mine, and he asked if he could join me, and I said, sure. And as he sat down, he smacked the table and said, "Praise God, ain't it a wonderful day? Don't we serve a loving God?" Well, unbeknownst to him, I had just about had it with God. And so I looked right at him and I said, "I don't think so." I said, "You tell me why your God took a little 5-year-old girl and nearly burned her to death. I don't call that love, do you?" Well, suddenly he was at a loss of words, and he suggested that I go talk to the Dean of Women. I did go speak with her, but only after a threat of dismissal from the school for failing to appear before a faculty member at their request. So I could not get kicked out of school, because my mama would kill me. So I did meet with her, and she said, "I hear that you're having a hard time." And I'm like, "No, ma'am." I'm like, "I don't know this woman, and I'm not talking to her." So eventually she suggested that we pray, and I said, "You go ahead." I was just an ugly little snot. But at that time, I was taking a class which required me reading the Old Testament book of Jeremiah. I was alone in my room when I came across Jeremiah 18, verse 1. This is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord. "Go down to the potter's house, and there I will give you my message." So I went down to the potter's house, and I saw him working at the wheel. But the pot he was shaping from clay was marred in his hands. So the potter formed it into another pot, shaping it as seemed best to him. The human impact of fire. I was undone and sat on my bed and sobbed. This passage really spoke to me. It was like God said, when you were 5 years old, he said, the vessel that I'm shaping is just not quite right. So I'm going to reshape you and remake you, and it might not seem good to everybody else, but it's right to me because I'm the potter. And that forever changed my mind. After Bible college, in 1981, I became a registered nurse, and the nursing profession has given me many avenues to practice. My most exciting job has been working as a flight nurse. Wonderful job. And being part of the flight team, we got to do fun things like this. Attend the NASCAR races. That's Dale Earnhardt's pit. That's Richard Childress on the stool. You know, from moonshine to wine, Mr. Childress now owns a vineyard. And I also got to be in Winner's Circle at Rockingham with Rusty Wallace. But in spite of my incredible career, one of the things that I believed about myself is that I would never marry because of my scars. The human impact of being burned is that you believe lies about yourself. Now, what is funny is I never really thought about my girlfriends who were perfectly normal that were not married, but I am happy to report that I have been married for 13 years to a wonderful man who loves me and who thinks I'm beautiful. He is here today, and I have to say it is because of him that I am able to travel and speak across this nation in support of home fire sprinklers. Thank you, honey. I have learned many things in this journey. I have learned many things in this journey, but one of the most important is this. I am not defined by my scars. I am defined by who I am in my mind and in my heart. That is who I am. It was 35 years after my injury that I became a part of a burn support group, and that is where my pathway to advocacy began. I presently volunteer in the burn unit on a regular basis, encouraging not only burn victims but their family members and friends. I participate in a monthly burn support group, and I am a survivor offering assistance in recovery. That's a SOAR volunteer as well as an instructor. The Phoenix Society offers training for both of these. This is a picture of what I do. I offer help. Through the burn support group, I learned about the Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, and my life has never been the same. Amy Acton, the executive director, has involved me in ways I never imagined. I took advocacy training offered through the Phoenix Society and was coerced to join Common Voices. The pathway to advocacy has taken me to places I never imagined and paid me compliments that have touched my soul. Following are a few examples. This 10-year-old girl was burned in a car wreck. Her mother died in our burn unit, and her father asked if I would accompany her on her first day back to school. I used a program developed by the Phoenix Society called the Journey Back. The program assures a positive transition back into the classroom. What a precious day for me. After attending a World Burn Congress and talking briefly during an open mic time, a stranger approached me and asked if I would be willing to come to Ohio to speak to an Amish burn support group. I was like, are you flippin' kidding me? When my husband and I arrived in Millersburg, Ohio that evening, it was 22 degrees. And I thought, these folks are not going to come out in their little buggies on a night like this. But as we entered the barn, there were 2 rows of benches. My husband sat down, and I went to speak with some folks and came back to sit down by him. When I sat down, he said to me, "Get out of here." I said, "What?" He said, "The men sit here. You got to sit over there." So, you know, it's just amazing. I mean, who gets invited into the Amish community? It was just such a privilege. I remember telling my story to 7th graders and receiving this email from a student's mom. "Dear Pam, I wanted to just take a minute to thank you for the impression you made on my daughter, Ashley, today. She got off the bus and we spent an entire 30 minutes discussing your situation while she had a snack. She told the rest of the family, she has 3 brothers and sisters, about your home being destroyed by fire and your subsequent injuries. We talked about the obstacles you faced throughout your life and the stellar way in which you've handled all of them. The fact that you took time out of your day to talk to the 7th grade class is beautiful. As a parent, I find it harder and harder to place wonderful people in my children's path, and I thank you for being one of those people. Ashley will never forget you or your story. We will make sure to show our appreciation by contacting our senators and congressmen and asking them for support of the fire safety bill." I teach the skin system to 7th and 8th graders, and then I tell them my story. a science teacher has asked me to do that. It's just a wonderful thing. I also have a wonderful privilege to lobby in Washington for fire safety issues, and when called, I am happy to go to the Hill. My first trip there, as I was wandering down those long hallways, my grandmother's words rang through my ears. Honey, this happened to you for a purpose. Here's my warning to you. If you become involved with the Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, your life will change, and your passion for prevention will be embedded in your brain. If you want to keep your ho-hum life, then stay away from the Phoenix Society. But if you want adventure, then become involved with them. I just want to give you a peek of what happens at the World Burn. The conference begins with a walk of remembrance. It is a powerful conference where healing takes place and lives are changed. Perhaps these photos might tempt you to attend. The conference offers a unique and powerful opportunity for people to come together to offer support, increase their knowledge of burn recovery, and share inspiring stories. For many burn survivors, this is their first opportunity to connect with others on the journey of burn recovery. It can be a profound and life-changing experience. It is through World Burn that new advocates are spotted and encouraged to take advocacy training. In this way, the pool of advocates continues to grow. And you know what? About 7 or 8 years ago at World Burn, I met this guy named Chief Shane Ray. Anybody ever heard of him? Oh, yeah. As far as I know, he hadn't started talking Northern yet or anything, so don't worry about him. At the time, I was not involved with Common Voices, and I did not have any idea that I would ever be speaking to an elite group like this. For those of you who know him, he's pretty passionate about prevention. And I have to tell you, I was absolutely undone when he told me that a fire chief had told him that the political fight for fire sprinklers was just too much work. I was like, it's too much work to fight to save lives? Really? Well, my life was changed by attending a World Burn, and I guarantee you, if you have the opportunity to attend, yours will be also. One person whose life was affected is a guy named Rob Feeney. Rob Feeney was burned in the Station nightclub fire, and Rob received advocacy training through the Phoenix Society, and he found purpose in healing after speaking at a Chattanooga, Tennessee City Council meeting. They were addressing the issue of fire sprinklers being installed in nightclubs. They gave Rob 3 minutes to talk. This is how he began his talk. The irony is that in 3 minutes, about 96 of the 100 victims of the Station nightclub fire lost their life that night. Including in it were my parents' aide and 2 of our friends. He describes the scene and then says, I was one of them still alive after the 2.5-minute mark. I crawled trying to find my fiancée. I found her sneaker. I tried to drag her, but there was skin hanging from the top of my head down past my chin, and both my hands were useless from the burns. I could do nothing but crawl. I crawled over bodies until I could find a way out. I found a way through a hole in the wall about 6 feet in front of the front door, where I saw only a wall of flames. Later, I found out that there were 40 bodies piled 7 feet high in that wall of flames. We couldn't get out. The firefighters couldn't get in. I basically lost my life that night. My fiance's 2 daughters, at the time 8 and 11 years old, never said goodbye, and nearly 70 children lost at least one parent that night. Even after the fire started, we all had an expectation of safety. I assumed there were sprinklers in the building. I thought we would just sit outside until the smoke cleared. I never dreamed a month later I would get out of the hospital, never to go back to our home. I needed basic living assistance for the next 9 months. I had to learn how to walk, brush my teeth, wash and comb my hair, turn a doorknob. It took 6 months to learn how to tie my sneakers or use a zipper on a pair of pants. But I was lucky. I was able to relearn the skills I needed for everyday living. The effect of having a speaker is powerful, and it did affect the vote of this council in a positive way. As we come together and unite in purpose, I truly believe that we will win this battle. The fire service, in harmony with Common Voices, the Phoenix Society, Faces of Fire, the Fire Sprinkler Coalitions, are a powerful combination. Please feel free, you can write down these addresses. Please feel free to contact Vicki Pritchett or Amy Acton if you need a trained advocate to speak in any of these categories. Home, campus housing, off-campus housing, nightclubs, cars, domestic violence, work, industrial, and of course, firefighters. Oops, did that say men? I didn't mean to say that. Firefighters. Yeah, Amy at phoenix-society.org and vpdesign@aol.com. They have a pool of speakers who are willing and ready to speak in whatever venue that you need. I would like to close with this story. A young girl was walking along the beach upon which thousands of starfish had been washed up during a terrible storm, and when she came to each starfish, she would pick it up and throw it back into the ocean. People watched her with amusement. She had been doing this for some time when a man approached her and said, "Little girl, why are you doing this? Look at this beach. You can't save all these starfish. You can't begin to make a difference." The girl seemed crushed, suddenly deflated. But after a few moments, she bent down, picked up another starfish, and hurled it as far as she could into the ocean. Then she looked up at the man and replied, "Well, I made a difference to that one." Perseverance against great odds and against the criticism of others is the very hallmark of a value-based idealism, as is refusing to accept failure. I hate failure. The understanding that we hold in our hands the power to change a life, a mind, or a circumstance right now is a powerful insight and motivator. At the same time, idealistic acts, even highly symbolic ones like throwing starfish back in the ocean, have the power to inspire others to act, and sometimes in numbers significant enough to make a major or even complete impact on the problem at hand. We have a fire problem, and we have the proven technology to make an impact on the problem, and that is fire sprinklers. The human impact of fire is both devastating and powerful. It has been 55 years since my injury, and it grieves me to think that we still do not have mandatory home fire sprinklers in all new home builds. I just found this last night as I was preparing, and it's from an article from a New York Association, the executive director of the New York Association of Fire Chiefs. The National Fire Protection Association, the nation's leading authority on fire-related issues, found that the death rate in sprinkler-equipped properties is 57% lower than in properties without automatic extinguishing systems. Sprinkler-equipped homes experience a significantly lower rate of property damage than houses without sprinklers. Residential sprinkler systems are proven to be effective at both protecting life and property. Homeowners are not the only ones to benefit from sprinklers. Firefighting becomes significantly safer when entering a sprinkler-equipped building, as the presence of these systems help to slow a fire and even prevent a devastating structural collapse. Firefighter injuries and fatalities stand to decline if more homes are built with integrated sprinkler systems. These systems also provide seniors and those with disabilities added time to escape a home fire. For these reasons, the Build Safe New York Alliance today is urging New York to adopt the International Codes Council 215 International Residential Code, which requires residential sprinklers to be included in new and newly refurbished homes. These codes should be adopted as is, with no exemptions or no carve-outs. If the adoption of this code results in one child spared from the agony of severe pain, or if we save the life of a firefighter by avoiding a building collapse, then it will be well worth it. For too long, the Empire State has been operating with an outdated and potentially dangerous building code, falling behind our peers across the country. It's time we ended that practice. We need 48 states to invoke this practice. A fire marshal said this: if we pass an ordinance today, we're not going to dramatically affect fire deaths in 2015 or 16. The near term is not what it's about. We need to require sprinklers today to change the face of fire tomorrow. So we're not going to see what I've seen over the past 20 years. The fire marshal at that time isn't going to speak to the press about a tragedy where 3 children died. He or she will talk about how nobody died because of sprinklers. I realize that it might not happen in my lifetime. And one day you may see me speaking from a rocking chair, but I will not stop fighting for the cause. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for all you do to make a difference every day. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Okay, here's the question. And I'll tell you what this is. It's a homemade lemon pound cake with lemon glaze made with real butter by moi. I made this. Okay, are you ready? Here's the question. What year were fire sprinklers invented? Very close.
1897.
Hey, honey, what year?
1873.
Ooh, you're so close. 1874. Come get your cake.
What an exceptional speaker and a delightful lady. And Larry, it's great to have you with us, and welcome again. Our next presenter, I've had the privilege to know for many years, and I appreciate the opportunity, Joe and Ashley, to introduce him. I will not make a lengthy introduction, but yeah. Many years ago, I had the opportunity when I was chief of the county department to appoint this man as a volunteer firefighter. He has turned out to be an inspiration, and I think you will see that tonight. Bucky came from the upper Midwest, cold country, snow and ice, and he is a registered nurse. He worked at our hospital for many years, a fantastic emergency room nurse. All of the certifications that you can imagine as a firefighter. He's a deputy coroner and always willing to go and do and reach out to people. And very recently, he developed some health issues. And he has a powerful story, and he wants to share that with you tonight. So Pam, with you and Bucky, my goodness, we're getting a double dose. So without any further ado, let me introduce Bucky Mock, Captain with Clarendon County Fire Department.
Good evening. Another my story. And this is another chapter of my story, and it started in 1912, or 2012. In November, I arrived back from New York, where I had been deployed with the DMAT team to help the victims of Sandy. I got back to our fire station the last day they were doing physicals. And I was kind of a train wreck when I got back. I had some health issues and other things that were going on. I went for my physical, and I knew things weren't going to be the best. And they were used to always getting back with me a couple of days after my blood work came back because it was always bad. Well, this time, parts that weren't normally bad were showing that things weren't going right. My kidney functions were way out of whack. My blood pressure was up. And then I had shingles, which I'd picked up while I was in New York, and a health issue that I had for quite a few years was out of whack, and that was that I had a bleeding problem. Well, I went to my doctor. He made arrangements for me to go down to MUSC to see a kidney specialist. And they put me in the hospital and did a kidney biopsy and came back with this disease that I'd never heard of called amyloidosis. It's a protein that plugs up your kidneys. I was going into renal failure, and if something wasn't done, I was going to end up on dialysis. Then they sent me to an oncologist, a cancer specialist, who did a bone marrow biopsy and called me up and said, "You've got multiple myeloma." I've been in the healthcare field for a long time, and multiple myeloma used to be a death sentence. There was no cure for it, nothing they could do, and it was a matter of how long. Well, things had changed, and they are treating it. And after doing discussions of this and that, and getting put on a clinical trial, in April, I started chemotherapy. I would go down to MUSC 2 days a week. They never put in a port because I told them I swim every day. And I couldn't swim with an IV in. So they'd put the IV in. Sometimes I told them, if you're not going to get it, let me put it in. And I put my own IVs in at times, but not there. I did train one nurse how to start IVs. And I would go back. I went every Monday and every Tuesday. And of course, my wife doesn't like to get up early, but she always went down with me. But we always had to stop by the pool before I went down so I could swim a mile. And this went on for a little over 5 months. When I'd come home, sometimes I didn't feel the best. It really takes a lot out of you. But if the tones dropped, I went to the fire. I told our chief, I'm going to fight fire. I won't ever do anything that's going to get somebody else hurt. But if I feel like I can do something, I'm going to do it. There was one structure fire the same day I had chemo, about an hour after I got home. I was in an air pack underneath the building, working on hot spots, and the chief was up above shouting through the hole, "Are you all right?" But I did everything I could. In the end of August, I was getting close to the end of the chemotherapy. And one Saturday morning, I got up, and I thought I was fine. My wife knew different. I wasn't very cooperative, and basically got in the bathroom and fell on the floor. She didn't know what to do. So what does somebody do but call family members? She called firemen up. I had two of my fire buddies come over to the house, and basically, after lots of convincing and lots of threats, got me in the car and took me to the urgent care. I knew the doctor that was working there, and I'd worked there some. And when we got to the hospital, when we got to the urgent care, to the parking lot, there was our engine and about 4 other firefighters waiting to help get me inside. That's how close our brotherhood is. Well, my doctor at that time says, okay, no more chemo. And what I had is I was septic, very close to death, and I ended up back at MUSC in the hospital for a week. They stopped the chemo, and arrangements were being made for me to have a bone marrow transplant. I had put off the transplant because I was taking a family vacation. We're Minnesota Viking fans, and we went to London to see Minnesota Vikings play Pittsburgh Steelers. But we had a family vacation. We all went, and because you never know what might happen when you have a transplant or when you have that kind of a procedure. The day I got home, I started the process of the bone marrow transplant. I first had to have a shot that's a growth stimulant, and it's to build up the cells before they take them. I use my own cells. And that shot only cost about $16,000. Isn't medical health wonderful? And right after I got it, I then went to a workshop, a medical workshop, so I could get some more training, even though this thing was starting to cause some pain and stuff. And a week later, a week later I had a central line put in, and they went and harvested the cells. And in the middle of October, I went down to Charleston and checked in to the Hope Lodge, which is the Cancer Society's McDonald House. When you donate to the Cancer Society, this is one of the places that the money goes, and it's fantastic. They take care of you, you've got support, and a place to stay, because once all this process started, I couldn't leave Charleston. I then went into the hospital, and they gave me the massive dose of chemotherapy that basically wipes out everything. They told me to keep ice in my mouth and cold to try to prevent getting mouth sores, which is what this massive chemotherapy would do. In about a 15-minute period, I had eaten 4 to 6 popsicles and 2 glasses of ice. And I didn't have any problems with any sores in my mouth. The next day, they inject the cells. And this is me getting my transplant, stem cell transplant. It's not painful. It doesn't make you feel bad then. And the next day, they discharge you from the hospital. You have to be close. They check you regularly and are constantly monitoring your temperature. And as soon as the temperature goes up to 100.4, that means you're getting septic and you need to get back to the hospital. They can almost tell you to the day of when that's going to happen. Well, it happened, and into the hospital I went, and while I was in the hospital, the next thing they said was going to happen was the hair starts falling out. Well, I had this picture taken in a video because what I did is I pulled my hair out, took a video, and put it in envelopes so I could give it to my grandchildren. You got to keep a sense of humor. And pretty soon you're basically, the hair was gone, and I've always had a pretty nice head of hair, except I get it cut short and let it grow. And I stayed in the hospital. I still wasn't doing real well. And then they sent me back to the Hope Lodge, and I was there, and I told my wife, I said, I'm not ready to go back. And I went there, and I was there for maybe 2 days. And really felt terrible, didn't want to do much. And as Carter said, I'm from up north. I'm from northern Minnesota. The town that I'm from was Embarrass, Minnesota, who has the record cold after they got a new thermometer because the old one broke at 60 degrees below zero. The new one goes down to 100 degrees below zero. And I could really pretty much tolerate the cold until this happened. And it's got my whole body all messed up, and I felt terrible. But I had gone back into the hospital, and finally I got out, And like one day after I got out of the hospital, I went to the clinic, or to the Hollings, the cancer center, and they said, you can go home now. And it didn't take me long, and I was on my way. Excuse me. This is my wife, and during this whole process, she was great. When I was getting ready to have the transplant, and of course they ask all kinds of questions and they do stuff, and one of the things that they asked about was, who do you have as a support people? And they knew my wife, and I said, and then I've got my kids. And they said, okay, and do you have anybody else? And I said, I have my family. And they said, well, do you have anybody else besides your family? I said, my family is over 100 strong. It's the whole fire department. And during the process when I was in the hospital, I had many people come down to see me. And when I got home and I was still pretty weak, I had firefighters that would come over and help me do things. We had the big ice storm and they helped me clean up stuff. It was really great. A few months after the transplant, I was at an officers' training, and we were talking about the initiatives from the Fallen Firefighters Association. And in the process of talking about that, they brought up about how they're sending out the PPE with warning tags about washing them. And on the piece of paper that they were sending out with the gear, they had down that multiple myeloma is one of the leading causes of cancer in firefighters, which is obtained through the carcinogens that get on your turnout gear. And that hurt. I could take that I got cancer. But when it came back and I started to realize that I got cancer because of something I loved doing, being a firefighter, it really hurt. And I said, I've got to do something to prevent this from happening to as many people as I can. And as I've been doing that, more and more things have been coming out about keeping your gear clean. And then I got to the conference last summer, and one of the classes I took was with Mike Galliano and Paul Combs about passion, tools, and cartoons. And one of the things after they had given their talk, that they said, does anybody have a passion they want to share? And I got up and I told what I'd been through. And Mike said to me, and I've known Mike for quite a while, he said, go for it. He said, write a book, write some articles, and do a presentation. Well, I've got the presentation that I'm going around. Anybody that's interested in the presentation I have about cancer and firefighters, stop by and see me, and I'd love to come to your department and present it. And Paul Combs sent me this cartoon that he drew. He sent me a #1 copy, signed it, and said to me, "Thanks for the inspiration. But we've got to change our thought about cleaning our gear. It's not a badge of honor. We carry that dirty stuff around and we're being exposed to it all the time. And I haven't let the cancer get me down. There's not a cure for it. There's a treatment for it. It's going to come back, but I'm going to live, and I've told the doctors I'm after quality. And after this last week, this is the opposite side of what people were looking at on the news. This is the top of El Capitan looking down. And last summer, after everything I had been through, I said, I got to go up and I have to repel it. And this is me on the edge of El Capitan just before I repel 2,650 feet. Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't bring a cake.
Two very powerful stories. I'm now going to bring Jason Pope to introduce our next instructor.
Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to get to introduce the next speaker. He has been a friend for, I guess, about 10 years now, and the Forestry Commission in our state is a wonderful resource that we know about. We work with them regularly. We see them a lot. They're our friends. They've been a big help to us and support us. And Daryl Jones is the Forest Protection Chief at the Forestry Commission, so he's a fire chief too. And he does a lot of good stuff for us. He's always been a big ally. So I'm just glad to have him here this morning, or this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. I am happy to be here. I know you interact with us, and, you know, like you waiting to leave tonight, you'll be waiting for the Forestry Commission like you are when you call us sometimes. I had to pick on ourselves, you know. I asked Joe and Jason we met sometime a few months ago, and I asked if I could get in front of you guys and talk about something new that we've worked on that I'd like you to use, and I want to get out to you. You're the first group I've really showed it to. It's a tool that I developed with my counterparts in the other 12 states in our region. It is a big difference in the way we approach wildfire risk and wildfire prevention and wildfire planning. I'm going to do something risky tonight, two risky things. One is I'm on a Mac computer that I've never used before. That's Jason's fault. Number two is I'm going to try and go to a website and show you how to do something, and I was told I'm a #2 pencil in a .com world. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this product and let you see what it is, and then hopefully give you some information, let you go try it out, and give us some feedback. Just, you guys know this, you see the fires, but we respond, the Forestry Commission, to 3,000 or so wildfires a year in a normal year. Our maximum fires per year in my career was 12,000 fires in 1 year. An average year is about 3,000. They burn about 20,000 acres a year. We lose 60 to 70 homes in an average year. Our average fire size is 7 acres or so. It's the lowest in the Southeast. But we can do a lot better. We know that our fires are preventable. We do have fires almost every day. We responded to 4 today. the day after rain, we had fires. This is a screenshot from our dispatch system, January 29th of this past year. Red dots are prescribed burns, forest, wildlife, and agriculture burns. The flame icons are wildfires that we have personnel assigned to. We go to a lot of fires. You guys stop a lot of fires that we don't have to go to. And I don't know at all what that number is, but I know there's a lot of fire that I don't see. We know from a recent study that every dollar we spend on fire prevention saves us $35 in suppression cost. We've been trying to get that number for years. We finally worked with some people in the U.S. Forest Service and University of Florida to do a study for us. So every fire we prevent is one we don't have to go put firefighters at risk to, that the public's not at risk to, that saves everybody time, money, and risk exposure. We know the population's growing. This is a study the Strom Thurmond Institute at Clemson did, 2002, and they projected Charleston, just the population area around Charleston from 2002 to 2030. The expansion of the wildland-urban interface, where the houses meet the woods, hoods meet the woods, is how somebody I know puts it, is growing. I know in my career, I started in 1987. We would show up at fires, Forestry Commission, and we wouldn't see you guys. There were a lot fewer fire departments. They were out in the woods. They weren't threatening homes. We'd take care of them. And in the course of my career, that's changed, where we're always on fires with the fire service. We're working together. We're on a common goal and hopefully on a common objective. We're trying to get better at that. We do know a lot of these people that are buying homes in the woods, because of the beautiful backyard and all the stuff behind them, they're buying it there, don't understand fire. They don't think fire's a problem. They see it on California, on TV. They see it other places. They don't think it's something we have here. It's an education issue, right? We know there are threats. We know there are people that are buying properties. Tom Barstow can talk about people that have properties that don't know they have a risk, right? We saw that in 2009. There's an education issue, and we're trying to get better tools. It does happen here, right? Big fires, our largest fires since we've kept good records, was 30,000 acres. We had a 20,000 acre fire in 2009 that burned 76 homes and damaged 96 others. We had a 27 acre fire in 2013 that burned 108 condos in 30 minutes. Wildfires happen. They're a risk. People, by and large, don't understand they're exposed to that. So what we were trying to do with this project was figure out a way for us, collectively, everybody in this industry, to be able to visualize wildfire risk, identify the areas where you really need to focus your work and get more bang for our buck, basically, on our prevention dollars, our education dollars, and our preparation dollars. So this tool, the Southern Wildfire Risk Assessment Portal, SouthWrap, was something we designed. We spent, since 2005, we've been developing this project. We spent several $1 million collectively across 13 states and the U.S. Forest Service to develop a tool that helps us visualize what you know. You know in your service area where the worst problems probably are related to this. You know where you keep having fires repeatedly. You know where you have trouble reaching because of lack of infrastructure or your departments aren't close by. This was one way we came up with to try and visualize that and come up with a planning tool. So after I explain a little bit about it, I'm going to try and run the model for you, and if I can do it, you can do it. I promise you. It is a free tool. It's web-based. There's a public viewer that anybody can go to, and I'll show you that, and there's a professional viewer you have to register for. Free registration, everybody gets approved. I approve you, so you're all in. We were trying to address those key problems and figure out a way to tell the county planners when they propose new development that they're building in a fire-prone area. We tried to do that with the Barefoot Resort in Horry County when they first started doing it. It was high-dollar real estate. They didn't care that it was fire-prone. We told them it's an area that we know is going to burn. It has a 7-year burn interval. We know every 7 or 8 years it's going to burn. It's the most flammable fuel type in the state. I was told when I started there were gasoline bushes. That's what they are, right? The air explodes. So we wanted tools to visualize that rather than us just saying it, to use some science-based and get good data to illustrate our issue. You visualize risk, right? You show people where the hot areas are, where you can affect the most change. It uses things like historic fire data. We know where fires have occurred in the past. We know that we'll see more fires there again. It repeats itself over and over. current fuels, what's there today, what's there in 3 years when we look at this again, how, if you put plants in the woods and you burn them down like we saw in '09, those fuels are back now, right? They come back. It's a short-term solution to remove fuels. We can tell you through this tool, if you have a fire, how tall the flame lengths will be. It's easier to put out a fire with 2-foot flame lengths than 80 feet flame lengths, right? So we can help you estimate and look at a certain piece of ground and tell you what the fire intensity or fire behavior will be. We can define an area of interest, and I'll try and show you that. You can go into your service district or your community, whatever you want, your neighborhood, and draw a line around it and generate a 35 or 40-page report telling you what the risk factors are there. It prints out a report, and you get emailed a Word document, so you can use that to write plans. We call them community wildfire protection plans. You can generate basically those things from this. We have used them already to help fire departments decide where to put a new station. That's not in the public tool, but if you're looking at a new station and you put it here or here, we can run the model and tell you which one reduces the risk more for wildfires. So it's all kind of applications, fairly simple to use, but you just have to play with it. Basically, we take the probability, the likelihood we'll have a fire, the intensity of the fire, you know, what kind of fuels you have and what kind of weather will determine the intensity, the exposure, you know, if you have homes or improved assets out there, and then the susceptibility. We've seen over and over again that homes of some kind of construction types with certain kind of landscaping are more fire resistant than others, right? So we know if you have the wrong kind of homes and the wrong kind of fuel type and the wrong arrangement, that there's a high likelihood they're going to go up if there is a wildfire. All of these are the things that go into define risk, and that's what we're trying to paint a picture of in this tool. We use past fire occurrence. That happens to be a past fire occurrence map. I can't remember where that is. I think it was in Williamsburg County. So we've had areas where we've had repeated fires going back to 1972 or so. We use data for this. We can map out hotspots where we know there's fuels that burn, we know there are causes that repeat themselves, whatever it is that triggers those fires. The type of vegetation, there's a national project called Landfire that uses satellite imagery to determine what type of fuels are on the ground. What people call the woods, I see fuels, you know. I'm a forester, I like trees, but they're fuels. You know, so the arrangement of fuels, the type of plants, all that makes a difference. How accessible a tract is. A tract that is, you know, 10 miles wide and 10 miles long with no roads through it is very difficult to stop a fire in because you just can't get to it, right? Water delivery is a problem, getting resources there is a problem. Distance to residential areas. A fire in the middle of nowhere, no houses, not as big a threat as one adjacent to a community. Infrastructure, road access, any access to water, all that is part of this tool. And then the distance. We know where our units are. We know where your stations are. We keep the state GIS database of fire station locations. So we plug all that in. All these things together, when you run the model and when you use the tool, show you for that area what your issue is. One new cool thing we did was we got access to nighttime LiDAR photography. One issue we have operationally is knowing where all the houses are when we go to a fire at night or even the daytime. This imagery takes nighttime LiDAR photos and identifies where lights are on at houses. And we plot that to show us where the homes are. It doesn't catch second homes or maybe homes where there's no lights on, but it does a great job of showing us where houses are up in the coves in Oconee County or down in the middle of a bay somewhere else. It shows us where those assets are. The colors reflect density. You know, the darker purple are more than 3 houses an acre. That's pretty high in development or high resources at risk. We take where the homes are, the purple map up there at the front, at the top left. We should take the potential flame length. If you have a fire, how high the flames will be. That directly impacts our ability to stop the fire, right? How many resources you'll take to do it, how you can get there, all that stuff. And then we develop the map on the right, which is the wildland-urban risk, the wildland-urban interface risk index. So basically, this tool takes all of this information, paints a visual picture, and this is what you get. There's an aerial photo behind it. You can barely see it, but it is behind there. The dark red area here on this side shows you where the highest risk is in this picture. What I see right here is very thick, closely planted pines. Pine fuel types, generally are the most prone to have crown fires, fires that are independent of the ground. We saw in Myrtle Beach 340-foot flame links at 2 in the morning in pine types. That's where your most intense fire behavior is going to come. All these are homes along the road. So this is showing this one plot of woods. It's a pine plantation, very thick fuels, hasn't had a record of a burn in a long time, and showing the most risk is right there in that spot in this particular image. So that's what this tool does. The public viewer, anybody can go to it. You can put in your address, and it'll show you your neighborhood, and it'll show you the risk. It'll graphically illustrate it for you. The pro viewer, which is where I would hope you guys go to, like I say, you ask for free registration. You can take your service area, a shapefile or a map of it, and import it into the file, into the program, run that report, and find out where your biggest interest areas are. If you already know the communities, the little neighborhoods, whatever, you can circle those, draw a map around them, it'll show it to you. You can export maps from this and put them into ArcGIS or other common formats to have it available for your county planners, for your emergency management folks, for their hazard plans. It's a tool that you can use to put lines into and get a lot of data out. So, that being said, Jason, here we go. You gonna help me?
You did it.
No, I can't. Okay, so this is live, so here's where I go off the rails. This is the front page. Remember, this is a 13-state tool. If you sign up here and tell us you're from South Carolina, you'll land on the Forestry Commission, South Carolina Forestry Commission. It'll show up here. It is available in all 13 states, from Virginia to Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas, everything in between. Those are the states that have it. The West is working on a similar project. They're taking our architecture and trying to expand it. All right, Jason. What? Finger scroll up. Listen to him. Come stand with me, friend. Let's I can't see the mouse on that one to make it work. There you go. Now. Okay, there you go. With Jason's help, he's staying right here for a minute. The public viewer I'll show you really quick. I think I'm going to show you quick. I don't know what those mean, but we're going to ignore those. So. In the public viewer, it opens up to the whole Southeast. When you're logged in the professional viewer, it'll zoom into South Carolina. You can go up to this cool tool right here and put in an address. I'll use mine. And if that works, I'll be really happy. I'm not so happy. What am I doing, Jason? Huh?
Don't like it.
Mm-hmm. No. We thought we tested this out earlier, but it's not liking us. Okay, how do I go back? Let's go back to where we were. All right, we'll try something else. I got another plan. There we are. Okay. 2 fingers up, huh? I told you this was difficult. Hit on the professional viewer. Here you go. All right.
Hey, you tell me where to push.
Yeah. This is like having a driver. It's great. So what I've zoomed in, this is logged in with my ID, so it pulls up South Carolina. You can view different things, and this is the Wildland Urban Interface Risk Index at a very high scale, what you see here. If I zoom in, all these little dots start to show up as communities, and we'll just use this one for the second. So the pixels are where the model has taken the fuels, all those factors I told you, and painted wildfire risk. This is one index, Wildland Urban Interface Risk Index. If we want to see the population centers, where people live, this is where the homes are in this view of the map. Go ahead further, you can go here to the base map, change it to anything you want. I just put aerial photos. You can take this particular layer, if you want to look closer. You see the aerial photos. You see the risk layer. You can swipe it back and forth. You can examine any one of these layers. Taking the population centers out, this is town, I can't remember where I am now, probably Greenwood or McCormick, somewhere over there. This area in the interior of the city is not at risk, right? There's structures, but there's not wildland. So we take that out. That doesn't count. Where you really want to focus is the areas where the fire gets into the community. So this is the wildland-urban interface. If you're looking to spend money on fire prevention, fuels treatments, which for me is usually prescribed fire to remove fuels, I go in these areas and focus my funding. Ignition density. This is where we've had fires before. You can identify places where you know it's going to burn and you know you're getting more ignitions. And this is for the whole state, anywhere you look. This is the burn probability, the likelihood that based on fuels present, slope, topography, all that stuff, the presence of houses, because where you have houses, we have more fires, more ignitions. So the hot spot in this particular area is down there on the bottom, right? This area. Other places are going to burn, but this is where most problems are going to be. Other things, fire intensity scale. And if you scroll down, you can see the legend for this. This shows you highest intensity, moderate. It gives you a scale for every potential thing you look at. Rate of spread, how fast the fire is going to move. Down at the bottom, it shows you how fast, if you have a fire, it's going to travel through the fuels that are present. So if you're planning, if you're trying to pre-position resources, if you're trying to decide how much extra manpower, how many additional engines, this is golden. You know where the fire is now, it tells you how fast it's going to travel to the point A to point B, and you can use it for planning purposes. Flame lengths, and this is all relative, but the orange and red areas are higher flame lengths. More resources, more apparatus to stop the fire there. And this one is my favorite. Fire type at stream, where the fire is going to get in the crown of the trees, independent of the ground, and the fire just burn through the tops of the trees. I've seen that 20 or 30 times in my career, where you're on the ground, the fire is burning independent of you. You can't stop it with a bulldozer. You can't stop it with water. You have to wait till it stops in the fuel. The fuel changes. So that tells you where your most intense fire behavior is going to be. It's a good place to look. And then the rest of it is things like fuels, and this is where it gets real deep. But whether or not, for me, where my bulldozers can stand up. Darker red areas, you can't stand up. It doesn't have enough surface tension or the ground pressure of the tractors would sink them. So we know which areas are really wet. We know which areas your apparatus might get stuck. We know where the high ground is where we can go make a stand and be reasonably safe. Slope is another one, how steep the ground is. We have a lot of issues with fire running up slope. This is a flat area, so there's not much. And then surface fuels. All these different colors represent different types. I happen to know that the yellow areas are a type of pine, some kind of evergreen. The blue areas are probably lesser fuels that are going to burn less intense. Where this really gets cool, if you actually use it, is when you go to manage project areas. You can take an area that you want to see, zoom to it. You turn off my fuels there. You can define an area, and this is where I'm going to try and let's see. So you can draw a line around the map, kind of following that road. And this is the same way you would do your service district or whatever county, however you want to do it. It tells me as soon as I get done, it's going to tell me how many acres are in there. In this particular area, there's 3,901.6 acres in that area that I defined. If I take that data I can export it into ArcGIS. I can export it anywhere I want to. The next step on this is to go to Generate Report, put in your email address and press Create. It's going to email you the 30 or 40 page document, a Word document, with all of these factors that I've showed you for that particular area. It will show you how many homes, it will show you flame links, it will show you spread rates, it will show you operability, it will show you fire occurrence, all those things in one report that you can take and modify and put into some other format for whatever purpose you have. And I can tell you from trying to run ArcGIS and other things, this is much easier. You know, you can do this. If you can use Google Earth, you can make this map work. So when you punch the button in about a half hour, you get an email, click this link to download your report. You save it as a Word document, put your name on top, your logo's on it, however you want to customize it and use it for your own good. So the base data for this, just to finish up, is land fire data, satellite data. We expect to get that refreshed every 3 to 5 years. So if we have a wildfire, land fire is going to pick up on the change in fuel types, and the fire risk is going to be lower for a few years because there's less fuel. As that fuel builds, because land fire knows how fast, we've programmed it to say how fast, you know, Lewis Ocean Bay and Tom's part of the world is going to reforest and grow. We know that in 7 years, fire risk is going to go way back where it was because the fuels are back. So that's what you use it, one way to use it. I know I've talked a lot of stuff. The easiest thing for you to do is to go to southernwildfirerisk.com, sign up, give me your name and address, email address. I will approve your request, and you'll be accessed this viewer, the professional viewer. So I hope you see some utility in it. You can print the maps and all that. It's a cool tool. We're available to help you do it. If you decide to use it and want some of your planners or anything to get some training, we'll come out and show you how to do it. I'll send out folks or myself, and we'll come out and draw maps and make sure you're comfortable with it. And then when you get to the results, if you need help interpreting them or presenting them forward to council or whoever, you know, we're there to help you. So it's an ongoing project. It's a new tool. We're trying to keep refining it. So I do want feedback, but my most important thing is to get everybody aware of it and have it being used. So I hope you like it. I'm here to answer questions. I'm always here to help you. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jason or somebody. Thank you, guys.
Now, Daryl, I will tell you, now you see the expectation. Next time we expect a pound cake or something. And you got your feet in well with the Mac. It took you a little while. You had to bring Jason up here. I thought you was turning into Jeff Dunham. Just some housekeeping things. I know you've been sitting a long time. Where's y'all's cake? Don't pass by that lobby. Sit down with it. We'll all enjoy. One thing I want to do real quick is I want to bring Ken Kirby to the stage. He says no longer than a minute. I got my presidential hook. I will take him off. But Ken, if you'll come up just for a minute. Oh, he can do it from right there.
I'd like to announce that today Eric Dunn was in San Diego and picked up our Grow Forward presentation. Eric Dunn and Russ Fryer worked hours and hours and hours on this thing. We're one of probably 4 or 5 states in the nation that are now dual accredited. So that's a big deal. And very proud of those two that worked so hard. The whole staff worked hard, but since it happened in my tenure, I'm taking credit for it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Did you get that because you knew a guy? I knew a guy. Just some things I want to tell you what's going on tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. sharp, meet in the lobby. We're going to do the dam run or the dam walk, whichever one you want to do. I'm a dam walker, so the slower guys can stick with me. Y'all boys that run, take off. So we're going to leave here at 7 a.m., and I understand it's like 5 miles, Joe? Like 5 miles down the road. We'll do that, and we'll get back for the classes. It'll start in 10. 10 a.m. the classes start. They'll be along the front hallway. If you get lost, stop and ask somebody. Or tweet it. Can you do that, Jason? There you go. Just tweet it. If you don't have agenda, you need an agenda. I believe there's some agendas in the back. If you're wondering what courses to take tomorrow, which classroom yours is going to be in, get an agenda in the back. Definitely want to thank all the folks who are coming up here today. Definitely want to thank the folks that are watching back home. I believe Rick Dunn, special thanks. He's watching from San Diego. So he heard the announcement of Pro Board. I thought he already knew, but maybe not. But if not, Ken did that good job. Also want to mention the hospitality room, and I believe it's in 127 and 129. Who gets to go to 127? Who gets to go to 129? I can go to anyone. All right. So just go to 127 or 129, whichever one they'll let you in. Joe, am I missing anything else? I am good. I know it was a long time on the back ends. I've seen some people moving around in the seat. So that will do it for this evening. Y'all have at it. Do a lot of great networking right out there in the lobby. So we'll see you there.